Picture a truck driver finishing a long shift in London. Years of experience, a clean record, hauling freight up and down the motorway. His annual pay somewhere around 35,000, maybe 40. Now Madrid. Same job, same long hours on the road. Around 20,000 to 25,000 euros a year. Mexico City. A driver moving goods across the country, often earning the equivalent of 6 to 10,000 US dollars a year. Warsaw. A skilled long-haul driver, maybe 15 to 20,000 dollars. Bangkok. It's less still. Now cross the Atlantic to a truck stop outside Dallas, Texas. A long-haul driver climbs down from the cab. Similar work, similar hours, and in a good year, hauling specialized freight. That American driver can clear over $100,000. Sometimes a lot more. Same cargo, same highways, same diesel, wildly different paycheck. Here's the number that stops people. While a typical driver across much of the world earns the equivalent of $10, $20, maybe $30,000 a year, experienced American truckers in the right niches, specialized hauling, oversized loads, hazardous materials, the long cross-country routes, routinely pull 6 figures. $100,000 or more to drive a truck, no college degree, no office, just the road. To a driver in Warsaw or Manila, that figure sounds invented. It's 3, 5, even 10 times what they make for the same physical job. So how did this happen? How did one country turn driving a truck, a job that pays modestly almost everywhere else, into a path to a 6-figure income? That's exactly what we're answering today. Let's kill the lazy answer first. It's not because American drivers work harder. A trucker in Mexico or India works brutally hard, often longer hours in worse conditions on rougher roads for a tiny fraction of the pay. Effort isn't the variable. It's not because they're more skilled. Driving a heavy rig takes real skill everywhere. An American driver isn't operating a fundamentally different machine than a European one. And it's not because everything pays more in America, so of course this does too. That's too easy, and it's not true. Plenty of jobs in America pay roughly what they pay elsewhere once you adjust for cost of living. Some pay less. Trucking is special. It pays disproportionately well above what you'd expect for a job, with a low barrier to entry. So if it's not harder work, not rarer skill, and not just America is rich, then something specific is going on. Something structural. A combination of geography, history, and a crisis that's been building for decades. So let's get into it. Start with a fact of geography. The United States is enormous, roughly 2,800 miles coast to coast, and unlike Europe, its goods don't mostly move by dense rail networks or short sea routes. They move by truck across vast distances on one of the largest road systems ever built. That road system wasn't an accident. In 1956, the US launched the Interstate Highway System, tens of thousands of miles of high-speed road, eventually stitching the entire continent together. Suddenly, you could drive a single truck from Los Angeles to New York on continuous highway. The country bet its entire supply chain on the truck. Goods, food, fuel, everything, riding on the backs of drivers. But here's the thing. In those early decades, trucking wasn't a 6-figure job. It was solidly working class. Through the mid-20th century, though, it was a respected, stable career, in large part because of one powerful force, the unions. The Teamsters, one of America's most powerful labor unions, represented huge numbers of drivers and fought hard for strong wages and benefits. For a time, a unionized trucker could comfortably support a family, own a home, live a middle-class life. The job had dignity and a decent paycheck. So the foundation was laid. A giant country, totally dependent on trucks, with a strong union floor under driver pay. That was the setup. Then, 2 things happened that blew the whole system open. One that should have crushed wages, and one that eventually sent them soaring. In 1980, the US government deregulated the trucking industry. Overnight, the old protected system cracked open. New companies flooded in, competition exploded, and union power in trucking went into long decline. For a while, this pushed wages down. Trucking got harder, leaner, more cutthroat. Adjusted for inflation, driver pay actually fell for years. So why are wages high now? because of what deregulation eventually created. A job that grinds people down, combined with a country that can't function without it. And that collision produced the single most important fact in modern American trucking, a massive, chronic driver shortage. Industry groups have estimated the US is short tens of thousands of drivers, with figures often cited around 60,000, and projections of the gap widening toward the hundreds of thousands in coming years as older drivers retire. The average age of a US trucker skews older, often cited in the high 40s, and not enough young people are coming in to replace them. The work is hard, weeks away from home, irregular sleep, long isolation. Turnover at big carriers has at times been astonishingly high, in some years exceeding 90% annually, meaning a company effectively replaces almost its entire driver roster within a year. Here's the iron logic of that. When a country absolutely depends on a job, and not enough people are willing to do it, the price of that labor goes up. Basic supply and demand, but supercharged. To attract and keep drivers, carriers started raising pay aggressively, adding signing bonuses, and paying serious premiums for the hardest, most specialized work. The median US truck driver wage sits in roughly the $50,000 to $55,000 range, already far above the global norm. But the specialized tiers, hazmat, oversized, team driving, owner-operators, are where the six-figure numbers live. The shortage didn't just raise wages, it created a ceiling high enough to be life-changing. So why doesn't this just correct itself? Why don't wages fall back down to global levels? 3 locks hold them in place. First, the barrier of the license and the lifestyle. To drive a heavy commercial truck, you need a commercial driver's license, the CDL, which takes training, testing, and money to obtain. That's a real filter. But the bigger filter is the life itself. Most people simply will not spend 3 weeks at a time sleeping in a cab 1,000 miles from their family. That unwillingness is permanent, which keeps the labor supply permanently tight. Second, the economy's total dependence. By most estimates, trucks move around 70% of all freight in the United States by weight. There is no backup plan. You cannot suddenly shift the American supply chain onto trains or ships. The geography and infrastructure won't allow it. So the country has no choice but to pay whatever it takes to keep trucks rolling, especially after the supply chain shocks of recent years showed everyone what happens when freight stops. Third, regulation that tightens supply further. Federal rules strictly limit how many hours a driver can work before mandatory rest, hours of service rules, which means each driver can legally do only so much. Cap the hours per driver, and you need more drivers to move the same freight, tightening the shortage even more. Who benefits? The drivers willing to do the hard tiers. Clearly, they've turned a grueling job into real money. But also, in a strange way, the whole system holds because everyone else, retailers, manufacturers, consumers, quietly pays the cost in higher prices, because the alternative, empty shelves, is unthinkable. The high wage is the price of a country that bet everything on the truck. Now zoom out, because the same job pays so differently elsewhere, for clear, logical reasons. In Europe, distances are far shorter and the rail network is dense and efficient. So a huge share of freight never needs a long-haul trucker at all. A driver in Spain or Poland is rarely 1,000 miles from home. The routes are shorter, the labor pool is larger and more mobile, especially with drivers from lower-wage EU countries willing to work for less. More supply, less brutal distance, lower pay. It's not that Europe undervalues drivers, it's that the job is simply less extreme and less scarce. In Latin America, like Mexico, wages across the whole economy are lower, the cost of living is lower, and there's a larger pool of workers competing for driving jobs, so pay stays modest even though the work is hard and sometimes dangerous. In much of Asia, similar story, abundant labor, lower overall wage levels, and shorter or more rail and sea-based logistics. Here's where I won't pretend one system is superior. The American trucker's 6 figures come bundled with a real cost: weeks of isolation, health strain, time stolen from family, a punishing lifestyle that the pay exists precisely to compensate for. A driver in Madrid earning less but sleeping in his own bed every night, near his kids, working shorter routes, may well have the better deal in the ways that actually matter. More money for a harder life isn't automatically winning. It's a trade. Every country strikes that trade differently, shaped by its size, its railways, its labor supply, and its cost of living. Step back, and the truck driver becomes a lesson about something much larger. A salary is not really a measure of how hard you work or how skilled you are. If it were, the hardest workers on earth would be the richest, and they plainly aren't. A salary is a measure of three things colliding: how badly a society needs the work done, how few people are willing to do it, and how much leverage those people have. Trucking in America scores high on all three: indispensable, understaffed, and increasingly hard to replace. That's the whole formula. Change any one of those, and the number changes. Flood the job with willing workers and pay falls. Make the work easy and pleasant, and pay falls. Build a rail network that makes the trucker optional, and pay falls. American trucking pays six figures, not because driving is special, but because America made driving essential, and then made it scarce. So the next time you see a truck thundering past you on the interstate, remember, you're not just looking at a vehicle moving cargo. You're looking at the single point where a whole continent's economy depends on one tired person in a cab. And the paycheck is simply the price of that dependence. Now I want to hear from you. If you drive trucker in the US, is the money worth it? Does the paycheck actually make up for the weeks away, the road, the toll on your body and your family? Tell me honestly, because no statistic captures that like you can. If you're a driver outside America, in Europe, Latin America, Asia, what do you really earn for this work? And does the idea of a six-figure trucker sound incredible to you, or not worth the life it demands? And if you're thinking about getting your CDL and entering the field, drop your questions. There are drivers in this comment section who can tell you the truth. Drop it all below. I read every comment, and they shape where this series goes. Because this is one piece of a bigger series uncovering the hidden economics behind American jobs, why some pay fortunes, why some don't, and what it really says about the country. Subscribe and come with me. See you in the next one.